Honda's Type R lineage is a pretty well respected one. Say Type R to any enthusiast and they're taken back to classics: EK9s, DC2s, DC5s, EP3s, and even modern day Type Rs like the FK8 and FL5. There are countless legendary Type Rs that deserve all the praise they get, but one of them shares the badge, had a winning recipe, and even has the motorsport heritage, but doesn't seem to garner the same attention: the CH1 Accord Type R. So the question for today's video: what happened? Did it really deserve to wear the Type R badge? Or was it just a pretender, too dull, grown up, and boring to wear the badge of honour? You can't mention Accord without mentioning BTCC. It competed in what most widely agree was the BTCC's golden era, battling against some of the race series' most memorable cars: the Volvo S40, Renault Laguna, Audi A4, and the Nissan Primera, which, if you're interested, I have already covered in a previous video. This time frame in BTCC was spectacular and showcased some of the most exciting races motorsport has to offer. Unlike other race series like Formula 1, with bespoke racing cars, viewers could watch their very own car, sat on the driveway outside, fight to the death on their TVs. And while the Accord wasn't a dominant force, it was definitely a competitive one and made consistent top 5 finishes on the grid. The Accord was a serious contender, and this encouraged Honda to pay a little more attention to their previously very sensible road-going version of the Accord. So, what did they do? Honda UK worked hand in hand with ProDrive, the body managing their BTCC team, to develop a special version of the road-going Accord. A version they felt so special, it was assigned the legendary Type R badge. The Type R badge carries serious weight. Unlike other performance lineages like BMW's M badge or Mercedes AMG badges, the Type R name has always been reserved for the best of the best. Yes, full-fat M cars are still divided from M Lights or M Sport packages, but the M, which once stood for motorsport, is now stuck on the side of base model economy cars like the 420D. The lines have become blurry. However, Type R, much like Porsche's Rennsport, has always been reserved for the full-fat versions. And that's something we should all have a lot of respect for. And with this Type R badge, a host of cool Type R bits that set the Accord Type R apart from its normal Accord counterpart, putting it that bit closer to its fire-breathing BTCC counterpart. It featured an H-Series 2.2-litre VTEC inline-4 producing 209 horsepower, a Momo steering wheel, Recaros, factory torsion LSD, stiffer suspension, bigger brakes, and Honda shaved around 60 kilos off the standard Accord. The Accord Type R was serious. Reviewers praised its incredible handling, revvy engine, and spectacular chassis. The car was set up to be a legend, but no one really cared. Honda only sold around 2,000 of them, which is a real shame, but it does make sense. Sold only in the UK, the Accord Type R didn't really have any competitors. It was far more focused than Ford's Mondeo ST200 and Vauxhall's Vectra GSI, making short work of them on track. But it was a fair bit more expensive. It was often pitted up against the Impreza WRX, but they were very different tools, with the WRX coming from an off-road rallying background and the Accord designed for carving the track. The Accord was too cheap and punching above its weight when lined up against something like BMW's E46 M3. This either meant that Honda had noticed a gap in the market that nobody else had noticed, or that they'd made a car that nobody really asked for. Unfortunately, it was the latter. The Accord Type R was a bit of an oddball. Despite being praised by Autocar as Japan's answer to the Sierra Cosworth, it had a bit of an identity crisis. The Civic Type R was smaller and lighter, a setup typically associated with a more back-to-basics raw sports car. The Accord was dressed up and sized more like a 3 Series. Buyers expected a little more refinement, but instead got a bare-bones interior, lack of creature comforts, and minimal sound deadening. Something which, as enthusiasts 20 years on, we can appreciate, but as first-time buyers back in the day, this was a pretty hard sale. If you wanted a raw race car for the road, you got a Civic Type R. And if you wanted a refined powerhouse, you went to the Germans. This was a real shame, but did come with a positive. The Accord depreciated dramatically compared to its smaller sibling, the EK9 Civic Type R, which is now outrageously expensive. But I do still really want one, so please like and subscribe so I can buy one. If you want a slice of 90s Type R, you'll either be looking at paying 15 to 30 grand for a Civic or Integra, or around 8 grand for an Accord Type R, in decent shape too. After more than 25 years, Accord Type R prices have started to climb. Enthusiasts are starting to look its way, and for good reason. I was looking for one a few years ago, and you could find them as low as 3K, so they are definitely on their way up. But you are looking at a slightly different package compared with the Civic and Integra. The Accord Type R didn't sport a super low displacement B16 1.6 like the EK9, or a B18 1.8 like the Integra. It came with a 2.2 litre VTEC engine, which actually developed some healthy low-end torque, all while maintaining a redline just shy of £8,000. It retained its high revving buzzy nature while adding some low-end shove for street drivability. This meant you could have a bit of fun without upsetting locals while you ping your Japanese biscuit tin off the 3 million RPM rev limiter. Very grown up. The boffins at Honda UK and ProDrive gave the Accord extra spot welds and chassis reinforcement, making the Accord as stiff as the Honda fanboys when they found out this car could also be optioned from factory with a huge Supra-like wing. A wing which Honda claimed provides real downforce. Some felt this looked a little out of place, but in hindsight, I think it really gives the car some extra character. Pair that with some colour options like Pirates Black, Championship White, and Milano Red, just to name a few, and the Accord looks pretty special. It's also worthy of mention that the Accord came factory standard with a limited slip differential, something which later cars like the Civic Type R FN2 and EP3 lacked. This is a huge bonus for a front-wheel drive car with a bit of power and is a selling point from a handling perspective. There is also a Japanese market version of the CH1. This was actually a very different car, designated the CL1 chassis code. As I mentioned previously, the Accord Type R is a UK exclusive and assembled in Swindon, and is one of the few examples of an export market car that actually seemed a little bit better than the Japanese version. The UK version is lighter and more focused. Despite being a few horsepower down, it seems to be, from what I could reliably source, a little bit faster. The Japanese market car was a little more watered down and luxury, whereas the BTCC blood runs strong in the UK variant, and I'd consider that a bonus. So where does this all leave the Accord? As a new purchase, I can see why it perhaps didn't sell too well. The Accord was too much of a compromise to be a motorway cruiser and wasn't quite as nimble as its smaller brother the Civic, leaving it in a bit of an odd position where it only pleased a very niche buyer. However, this identity crisis really does seem to have aged well, because as a second-hand purchase, it really is an exciting proposition. Real motorsport DNA, all the cool Type R bits, a factory LSD, rarity, a different spin on the Revvy VTEC engine, and a highly praised chassis, all for a very reasonable price. If you've ever been tempted by an Accord Type R, now might be a better time than ever to make that purchase.